Hello, and welcome to our special series of Green Elephant interviews during March 2021, supporting the annual B Corps month. B corporations, or B Corps for short, are businesses that meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency and legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. Throughout March, we are chatting with key people in companies which have chosen to certify as B Corps and become a force for good. Today I've been joined by Nora Livingstone from Animal Experience International. Now, Animal Experience International is a Canadian company which provides a matchmaking service. They match human clients with non-human clients or animals through volunteer opportunities at sanctuaries, hospitals, wildlife rehabilitation centres, research projects and government programmes. And then they send the humans to meet the animals. They've been a certified B Corporation for 8 years and have been through 3 certifications. So old hands, I would say, at the B Corp. So it's great to have that experience. Nora Livingstone is a semi-nomadic co-founder and CEO at Animal Experience International. Nora is a volunteer, coach, counsellor, explorer and specialist in volunteer recruitment, training and welfare, along with designing community-based international partnerships and enhancing curriculums, or is that curricula, for their accredited education programs. Welcome to the show, Nora.
Thank you so much, Russell. Oh, you can talk about me all you want. I sound great.
Always like to do a good intro. Now you just got to prove it. You're one of the few people I've come across actually working in a field who have a high qualification, a degree, or which are actually working closely in the area that they qualified in. You started off with environmental studies and cultural anthropology. Were you a force? Were you a force for good very young?
Well, I always tell people that I was a terrible student. I'm naturally curious and I love learning, but I am not great at assignments and I am not great I love reading. I'm not great at doing the reading. And so I loved school because I learned so much. But in university, I would say I was a force for good because I spent a lot more time volunteering and thinking about my sort of footprint on the world in the future rather than the present. So yeah, I'm very lucky to have the privilege to go to school and to learn so much at university.
True enough.
But
Yeah.
but I would say I was really I was there to be curious rather than to get a degree.
Was that something that was it a family thing? Was it something to do with the fact that you live in such an amazing country in Canada?
Yeah. In Canada, especially when I was going to university, we just didn't really do gap years. It just wasn't a thing.
No.
And it was very much with my family. My father was in the military as I grew up, and he loved the military. There's no life like it, but he very much wanted my brother and I to see where we wanted to go and make our own plan. And both my mom and dad really agreed that that was through education. And my brother and I are very curious. And because my dad was in the army, we did travel a lot and we were able to see a lot of different perspectives. And my family all kind of agreed, university for you, go there.
Go experience them.
Yeah.
And the courses, the environmental studies and anthropology, cultural anthropology, what did that bring to the game? What did that leave you with the desire to do?
Yeah, well, I actually really enjoyed learning, like I said, but I love my degree in hindsight because it was really holistic, which just sounds like a buzz term right now. But like, I didn't just learn about environmental policy. I then, once I was done learning about trees and how to protect them, I then went and I took the anthropology of death and how like we don't talk about death or we do, or what does a good death look like. And I did the anthropology of monsters and stigma. And so was really able to have just this holistic idea of it's not just about trees, it's not just about people, it's not just about culture, it's yes and for everything. And I think that that really helped with travel, and it really helped with having a business, because everything must be intersectional, and I like programmed my brain that way without thinking I would.
Yeah. So how did you make the crossover to Animal Experience International? Where did that come into the story?
Yeah, well, so when I did the anthropology of death, actually, my professor in fourth year had spent a lot of time in Nepal, and looking at the Yolmo Buddhists and how they die and what it looks like to die in the high Himalaya. And I just found this so interesting. And I've always loved mountains. I've always been an outdoor person. When I left university, I was like, I should also say I had no idea at all what I was going to do after university. There wasn't like I can't wait to have a business. I can't wait to write policy. Like there was nothing. It was go to university, question mark, family. Like there was nothing. So when I was very lucky to get the opportunity to go to Nepal, and I talked with my professor, and what would it sort of look like to be in Central Asia and then travel to Southeast Asia after, thought like, I'll go do this thing. This is a lot of people really like traveling, and I've liked traveling before, so I'll go. And when I was in Nepal, I found out about a dog center, the Kathmandu Animal Treatment Center, that was trying to create a world that was helping the community through helping dogs. And so it was vaccinating dogs for or against rabies, I suppose.
Yep.
And then it was also giving people the tools to get dogs off the streets. And oftentimes what happens in communities all over the world, if there's animals that are suffering and there's no way to help them, we don't see it. Including North America, we see stray cats and we don't see them, or we see because we don't know how to help them, we don't know who's around. It happens with wildlife as well. We see a fledgling bird, or we see an animal when we're in a conservation area, and we just don't see it because we're not empowered enough to help. And so this happens often with street dogs, that people just live their lives, want to help animals, but there isn't anyone there. And our while love is infinite, we do have a capacity for emotion and empathy. And so this center was there to help everyone. If there's a dog who's suffering, if there's a dog that needs to be rescued, there's a dog that needs medical attention and then to be put back into the community because that is where they live, their urban wildlife, then they'll help with that. So I loved the Kathmandu Animal Treatment Center's their mission, and I volunteered with them for a while. And when I came back to Canada, I just had international volunteering, like volunteering in general, but just like on my heart, like how do I get people to volunteer at these really amazing places? They can really super help these dogs and the community, and community health and everything that that's included. But how can I tell people like you should probably do this ethically? But then that question is like, well, what are ethics? Whose ethics? And how do you make it sustainable? So I became a volunteer coordinator at a wildlife center in Canada, and that's where I met my business partner, who's a veterinarian. And after I left the center, she pitched this idea for AEI. And it just shows you, like, sometimes you have your blinders on, because she said, what if we made a business? And the business was, we helped people, we matched people with these really great centers. And these centers got really great volunteers that had like the correct expectations and training before they went. And these volunteers could really trust us, and they knew they would be picked up from the airport. They would authentically be helping animals. They'd be working in the community, not at the community.
Yeah.
And I thought, how hard can a business be? Let's do it.
Walk in the park. And how long ago was that?
So it was 2011 that Heather said, let's start a business. And then it was 2012 that we sent our first volunteer. So we're getting a decade in, which
Yeah.
is pretty hectic.
Eight, well, it's 8 years of that decade of being as a B Corp, though. What
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere on one of the places I researched you in depth. Don't worry, not that deep. Is that you were? Uh, how do I put this? I can't remember the phrase now. I thought I was going to say what I was going to say. It was going to be a magical question, I can assure you.
Oh,
But
amazing. I trust you.
where, what drove? What took you? You couldn't wait. That was it. You couldn't wait to become a B Corp. You kind of wanted to rush in to become. You couldn't become it fast enough. Why? It was like finding your best friend or something?
It really was. Like, it was finding my best friend who also would sort of vouch for us. So much of AEI is us saying we exist because the counter exists. Ethical volunteering, I call it consent-based tourism, exists because for too long there hasn't been consent. And for too long, we have been exploiting animals and exploiting people. And so I really I honestly, that is so true. I was so excited to become B Corp. I found out what a B Corp was because I had a friend that worked for Patagonia. And that day I sent a message to Heather and I was like, we have to get this because people, there's no reason for them to trust us. I say, oh, hey, we are ethical. And if someone says, well, how do I know? I go, no, but seriously, you can. But everyone is saying that. And the idea of having, a third party audit you and say, oh, yes, you are ethical and you are sustainable and you are, you're causing benefit to the community. I just loved that idea. And it was so good as well because I had a background that I volunteered with a number of centers and I knew what was good and I knew what didn't feel good. And Heather's a veterinarian. So it was perfect for us to sit down with the assessment and say, where are our blind spots? Where can we grow? But also, what are we doing really well without knowing it? What did we just kind of like organically stumble into
Yeah.
that we're like, oh, I thought this was good, but now I have the language to explain why it's good.
Brilliant. So, how do you must have a great raft of volunteer opportunities you got to. What would you pull out as perhaps some of your I wouldn't say favorites, but what are some of the highlights of your volunteering opportunities that you offer people?
Yeah, well, yeah, you can't ask favorites. It's like asking a
No.
favorite child, which is
Well, I know. I
we
tell you
all
which
have
one's my
them,
favorite.
but we don't tell them. Um, yeah, one of the amazing things about AEI is we decided really early that we would never send someone to a trip or to a program until we had been there first.
Oh, right.
Because things can always look amazing on the internet, but there is something about being a solo woman traveler, showing up somewhere and saying, oh, this doesn't feel right, or yes, this feels amazing. And to go with consent-based volunteering, I think the animals have to consent with what's going on. The community doesn't just have to want you there, they have or welcome you there. They have to want you there and ask you to be there. And you yourself have to want to be there. And it has to be sort of like a full body yes. And there's been times that I've traveled to communities and I go, yeah, I was told that they wanted help, but they certainly do not. And I can feel that, and I don't want to be here. And if I don't want to be here, someone who's been so lucky to travel and who has seen a lot of different things, an 18-year-old that is in the middle of university or took a gap year, are they going to feel comfortable? So I will answer your question. My favorite form is long form, so I can go for ages.
I think I'd found that in our pre-discussion.
Yeah. But for like a highlight reel, because I've been able to go to all these places, it is amazing because every time we bring on a new volunteer, I get to say, I remember the first night I woke up when I was in a yurt in Mongolia, and that was amazing. And you are going to be living on the steppe with Mongolian scientists with the last wild horses in the world. There was BBC Planet Earth a few years ago took documentary footage, as they do, obviously, of Pallas cats in Mongolia. And I didn't put it together, but one of my volunteers sent me an email about a year before this footage came out, and they said, oh, we had a camera crew here and they were taking videos of these Pallas cats, and we got to see Pallas cats. And I was like, this is amazing. You are so lucky. And then I watched Planet Earth, and they said, this is the first documented footage of Pallas cat family interacting together. No one on Earth has seen this. So like my volunteers got to see this before anyone else. And it's just so amazing that this can just happen, but this is when you're working in the community. So I would say obviously Mongolia is incredible, but we have about 5 different sea turtle programs, and I love all of them because they are so different. Working in the community means when you are, well, I won't call it any communities, but if you are in Costa Rica or Greece or Australia, what exactly you are doing for the sea turtles completely changes. Because if it is poaching, or if it is longline fishing, or if it's plastics, or if it's intentional cruelty to sea turtles, that changes no matter where you are. And so you might be working with the same species, but it's totally different, and the hands-on work is different as well.
So how do you, we've seen some fantastic projects in the Orangutan Project, for example, which was very much put into the UK mind by a David Attenborough documentary. We went back 50 years ago, showed him 50 years ago in black and white, searching through the forest for his orangutan, to now being able to find them because they're fighting off the diggers. And obviously that puts a lot of people going, I'd like to go help there. And of course everyone can't go to there. It's got to be about matching these opportunities up. So how does that work?
Yeah. So I think, and it's such a good question, because we do watch that footage of that orangutan fighting off a digger, and everyone's heart breaks, and you go, I must do something different. I must help them. And and truly, the best thing you can do is divest from palm oil, and the best thing you can do is look at the ingredients and say no thank you. And like looking at fair trade coffee and fair trade sugar, like when we buy things, the market changes, and this will happen with palm oil, which I don't even think I'm naive to say. Like, we have enough things in the market saying that things will change. But to answer your question, one of the really important bits is there are local professionals in all of our communities. Yeah. So we very often don't place veterinarians. There are local vets, there's local scientists, there's local rangers and conservation officers that have always been there and will be there after volunteers leave. And in a time of COVID, are still there and are still helping. Yeah. So even though we can't send volunteers to the field, we know that there's still work being done. Yes. And I think that also needs to be said out loud so people hear that, so there isn't just that terrible feeling in your stomach of like, I have to do something because no one is doing anything. There are people who still are helping, even though a year into COVID, there are still amazing people helping these animals. But the way that we match people is we sit down with the center and we say, what do you need? And how do we really support you? We never take local leadership. And so we say, would a volunteer, pardon me, would a volunteer be helpful in this regard or that regard? And then we kind of have like a bigger conversation. Because oftentimes centers go, oh, well, we'll take volunteers for anything. Nope, we want to know exactly what you need. So elephants are a very good example
Right.
because elephants poo a lot. And the very best way we can help them is have them, not live in poo. And so when people volunteer with elephants, a lot of the work is getting enough browse from for them and getting food available and getting their vitamins and things like that available. But it's from trunk to tail work that you're doing that we're really honoring the vets that are there and the conservationists that are there and the people that are working there, and really honoring the elephants by saying you are in sanctuary because in Thailand you can never be released again. There isn't enough forest for an elephant to be released. And
Oh,
so we need to make sure that you have the best possible life in sanctuary, which is not a lot of human contact. It's obviously not exploitation. It's not with a chain. And it's not being around your poo. I'm going to just try to say poo 4 more
yeah.
times.
Go for it. See if we can
But
fit
then
it in.
so this happens at wildlife centers as well. We look at our wildlife center in Malawi in Southern Africa, in Guatemala in Latin America, in Perth, Australia. These centers have that text. They have nurses. They have people who have went to school for this. And personally, I'm really happy for that because I'm not a vet. I'll never be a vet, but I can go to Guatemala and I can cut up a bunch of bananas and I can put a bunch of seed in them and I can directly help toucans and howler monkey orphans. And it means that a vet can be a vet and they can do high level work. And I just get to be a hero and see a little howler monkey and be adorable.
That's brilliant. It really, yeah, you paint a fantastic picture of it. And I suppose that there must be the traveller that has high expectations of what they get to do as a visitor, as a volunteer, sorry, and then the reality of doing that for the period of the duration of their stay. How do you cope with the? I think I did see a comment about ethical travel, mental health in the field. How do you deal with making sure that people are healthy? And I presumably sometimes you've had occasion where people kind of go, I can't do this.
Yeah.
There's no toilet.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's very easy to tell an elephant to poo in the woods. It's harder for a volunteer. Got to say it again. Yeah, so what we do is everyone that wants to volunteer applies first. And it's a little bit of a formality, but in that application, we're able to see if they've traveled before, where they've gone, why they want to volunteer, and also what they think they're going to be doing. Once they apply, then they have an interview with me. So it's very hands-on. I talk
Wow.
with
Yeah.
every single volunteer, which I also love because I get to sit down with a volunteer and go, you are going to go to South Africa and work with sharks. And then I get to show people my arm where I have a very small shark scar and be like, I got this because I was not being very smart, but I got this in South Africa and I walked those steps first. You're going to have an amazing time, but this is what you should know before you go to South Africa. And this is what you should know before Thailand is a great example. They don't have hot water there, which I would argue you don't need to have hot water when you're at an elephant center in Thailand. But it's important to say out loud to the volunteers and say, this is exactly what you're doing to make sure that your expectations are correct.
Yeah.
And this is how you're helping. But also having that talk of culture shock is real and empathy overload is real and burnout is real. And I think wonderfully in the time of COVID, the mental health talk has just been, we've been really open about it. And we've been able to say, gosh, this year has just not felt 100%. And other people have answered back, I know, right?
Yeah.
And so, and this happens, when we talk to our clients, we also give them quite a big manual before they go away. It's sometimes about 50 pages, But the manual itself is broken up into, this is exactly what you should bring with you. You don't need to bring a tank top to Thailand. You do need to bring long shorts. You don't need to bring, what is a good example? You don't need to bring water filtration, because that is part of volunteering. But you should bring some like snacks for the plane, because you're going to be on the plane for a long time. And so in that manual, we also talk about mental health, and we have a little worksheet on it that says, the obvious to me, because I've traveled and I've dealt with culture shock and I've dealt with overwhelming feelings, especially when working with animals. What do you do at home for self-care, and how can that be translated when you're traveling? I remember I was in Mongolia. I'll tell everyone again, because I just love telling people that. But
was there any poo involved? Is that poo involved? No. All right, no, carry on then. Do a poo-free story if you can.
Oh, impossible. But I had been traveling for about 4 months before, looking at different programs and volunteering at a number of different community conservation, animal welfare programs. So by the time I got to Mongolia, I wasn't quite burnt out, but I was tired. And I went on the wild horse program, and it was so incredible, and it was so amazing. And then I gave myself a week in Ulaanbaatar area, because I was like, when do I get to go back to Mongolia? I want to see everything. Yeah. And there was one morning that I just stayed in like my hostel room, and I watched Pitch Perfect 2, because I just wanted to like hear my own accent, and I just needed to watch something that I didn't need to think about and wasn't rooted in animal suffering or helping or anything. It was just some like very nice women singing. And and that like totally reset it. Like I got it, I bounced back, and then I went in the evening and did like a big walkabout. But these things are really important, and mental health doesn't take a break when you're traveling. And so we really try to say it out loud to the clients, and then also have a bunch of different touch points with them.
Yeah, I think one of the most stark things that I've heard, and I haven't experienced it myself to any great extent, is when you move into an area with extreme poverty, and we come from incredibly privileged lands where clean water is demanded, it's not respected, and and you go to these people that have to walk miles to get to water, or they don't know where their next meal coming from, and you're walking past them in your fairly comfortable clothes to your fairly comfortable, albeit volunteer arrangements, and it's different. It must be incredibly difficult to create that. It's a huge juxtaposition to manage, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the reasons it's so important to us we do a lot of homestays, but to have, consent-based volunteering. It isn't just us flying in as a bunch of people from the global south saying, this is how you fix things, and this is how things should change. It's us living in the community, and all boats rising, all of us coming up together saying, how can I help you with the great privilege that I have, that is being able to travel, being able to buy new trousers, being able to have water purification. What does that look like to help animals? And by helping animals, we do help the community, and we do foster greater understanding of the natural world and of the environment, not just in the local community, but with our friends on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. When we're saying, I'm helping, I'm volunteering with orangutans, and this is why they can't be released, and this is why they're living in an enclosure, and this is why they're acting this way, people suddenly have a direct line between them and these orangutans, and then them with palm oil. And so it really is like, again, I just said it, but like all boats rise, like all of us understand a little bit more that more empathy just means more empathy.
Well, I think I could probably talk about this for a lot longer, but on the basis that we wanted to keep our interviews so everyone's got a chance to listen to them in a coffee break, perhaps we'll ask you just a couple of questions about the B Corp thing again, because it's B Corp. So would you, is becoming a B Corp easy?
It's
And
not.
staying a B Corp easy? Is it easy to stay a B Corp?
Mm,
Probably.
I would say it's it's not easy. It's not difficult. It is eternal. It takes a really long time to sit down with all the touch points that you have and see exactly what is happening with them. Is there benefit? Is there a plus? Is it a minus? What does that look like? Because in the B Corp certification, it's supposed to be eternal. It's supposed to be evergreen. And while it's not easy, if you're already thinking about intersectionality, if you're already thinking about sustainability, then not only are you able to like pick some things off and say, oh yes, I am doing this, but you're already on that path. So when you recertify and a question has changed and you go, oh, I didn't realize that maybe technology has changed, or
Yeah.
our interpretation of animal welfare has changed,
Understanding
or
figures or whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So it is about wanting to be a bit vulnerable because you want to be better. Like Maya Angelou says, once we know better, we can do better. And that is very much how we look at being a B Corp. We now know this, we're responsible, and we're responsible to get better every year.
Brilliant. And so, can you put a finger on then why you value B Corps then? As a, what's the thing that you value the most, perhaps? Oh,
I
can you
think
pick a most? You should. Perhaps I shouldn't have favorites again.
I I value B Corp so much because I know how hard it is. I know it's so rigorous. It's not just a certification that you half paid attention to a webinar and then they gave you a stamp. It's not something if you have enough money, then you get that certification. You had to like sit down for, sometimes weeks, sometimes longer, and look at all the processes. And so when a company does that, there's so much respect. When it's a small company that wants to take that much time out of their other processes, and when it's a big company and they go, I don't need the certification, but it is the right thing to do, I think that like they have my whole heart.
Yeah, it's a lovely thought. Really, is that it's just a value the respect, really, because what respect is given is also received, isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's great. So moving on then to perhaps some of the more mundane things. Have you got a tip that you'd like to share with our herd of listeners?
So I
Or an
didn't play
action?
by the rules. I have two tips.
Give us
Because
a long
we're
answer.
I will. Because we're Animal Experience International, I thought I would give an international tip and then a local tip.
Okay.
So the international tip is it's very, very easy. It's almost every single center in the world could use virtual volunteers. And those
Okay.
volunteers can do something as easy as editing. We have a lot of centers that English is their second or third or sometimes ninth language. And so while they are very good at communicating, maybe the level of English that they're using on an English-based grant or application just isn't at the level that for it to be competitive, it's going to be.
Okay.
So we through this whole time of COVID, we've had a few volunteers that have done editing for us. That we've had grant applications or project write ups, and they just edit it. They just make it into sometimes conversational English, but then sometimes just grammar can be changed.
Yeah.
And so that is fairly formal. But then I would also say anyone that shares anything on social media for a conservation center or animal welfare, you are virtually volunteering. You are expanding the network, and it doesn't look like you're doing a lot, but you are, because that network is how these centers are getting donations and volunteers and just education. World Pangolin Day just happened, and it's the world's most trafficked animal, and there are still people that
Horrendous.
don't know that. And it's, yeah, and there's, if you want to be very depressed, then you can look more into
Oh,
pangolin trafficking.
we'll do. We'll don't
Yeah.
do.
Don't do that. Look into the natural history of pangolins and you will be amazed. But if the listener or if anyone just looks at pangolins and chucks that up on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or anything, there's going to be other people that go, I did not know this animal existed. It's like a long unfurled pine cone and it is
Yeah.
incredible.
It's an amazing looking thing. They look at and they look so they're so cute, really.
They're so cute.
Incredibly cute.
So
Uh,
the
so we,
other thing I would say locally,
oh right, yeah.
every single person is living in nature. It, no matter where you are. So I know in Birmingham in the UK there are tons of, people would not say that they're wildlife, but there are some rats on the canals. But there's also foxes. There are amazing water birds. There are eels. There are tons of fish. And I think knowing that there are hedgehogs, knowing that you are in the natural world, no matter where you are, opens up your senses a little bit more to help the natural world. Putting up a bird feeder, having water in your garden. I know Springwatch recently said that there are more bird feeders in the UK than all of mainland Europe, which is crazy. But birds around the world are in decline, so we need more bird feeders, and we need more people knowing that these badgers or deer or wild horses in the New Forest exist, and they exist without us, but they can be helped by us. So very easy action, just noticing.
Well, they can live without us, but sometimes the damage we do means they can't live without the thing we just destroyed, which, so
Yeah.
many birds must be suffering from the severe drop off of insects. I'm conscious of how few insects there are now when I
Mm-hmm.
drive up the road, stuck on my windscreen,
Yep.
than there was 20, 30 years ago. When I first started driving, I'd drive 20, you had to pull over in a service stop to clean your windscreen.
Yeah.
People can drive from here to London, and that's a long way, and not even be bothered with one splat on the windscreen. So we devastate the insects, and that's got a huge knock-on effect as well. So yeah, I love that tip. Is they actually need our help because of the damage we've already done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, brilliant. So that's the tips after all the actions. So thanks for damaging our format. No, that's fine. The how about a recommendation from you?
A recommendation.
Just one book, or you
One book.
roll out your whole library.
I made a list of books that are so good. I would say, kind of going off piste because it's not about animals,
No.
but I would say right now, because we did talk about mental health and we talked about just self-care. There's a
Yeah.
book by a woman named Catherine May. She's from England, and she writes a book called Wintering.
The what, sorry?
And Wintering.
Oh, the wintering.
Mm-hmm. And the book itself is beautiful. Like, she writes like a poet. It's so lovely. But the idea is all of the seasons are natural. And, the seasons itself, the natural world goes through winter. And in winter, animals go into torpor, they go into hibernation, trees slow down. There isn't production of things, there's no progress for the sake of progress. And we as humans should be looking at this natural cycle, but we ourselves also go through a natural emotional winter, and we should be looking at that. And so COVID can be seen as a winter. It's a time that we don't need to have progress. We don't have to compete with how far we're going compared to someone else. We don't have to have so many banana breads. It's a time to hibernate. It's a time to go into torpor, look at the animals around you and what they're doing. And I think just the permission to rest is really important, but also the connection with that natural world is also so important. Like I said, like, we live in the natural world. As much as we try to put up skyscrapers and we try to dig out canals and we try to have these houses that are separate from nature, we're not. And so just coming back to our natural bodies in the natural world is important. So Wintering by Catherine May.
Yeah, it looks very nice. I just pulled that up on a bookshop. That we will link to that in our show page. Should I allow you to have another?
Oh no, if you did, then what even would I? Yeah, you should. Yeah.
Go on, give us one more, because
Okay, one
we always
more.
like a book recommendation.
So it's called The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery.
Okay.
And it is beautiful. If you do eat meat and eat octopus, you never will again. Because it is this natural history author. She decides that she wants to know more about octopuses and do they have a soul? Do they think about things? We know for sure that they dream. We know for sure that they have preferences with people and with fish. We know for sure that they play. We know for sure that they get annoyed. And so what does that mean when we look at octopuses? We look at terrestrial animals very different than we look at animals that live in the sea or in the sky.
Yeah.
And we see them as alien because they are so different and so amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
But this book is incredible because you read all about biologically all the really super interesting things about octopuses, but then you know a little bit more about their like psychology and their personalities.
Okay.
And again, like with the natural world, if we look at every single animal as an individual who has a food preference, if we only see that, wouldn't it be really difficult to exploit them? And wouldn't it be really difficult to not want to help them?
Yep, that's true enough. We dehumanize it, and there's been studies over here, I think, where um, children have been asked, where do you think this particular beef burger came from? What is it?
Yeah.
Nice cow impression. Yeah. So well, this chicken, they just think chicken is something they eat. They don't think of it as related necessarily, especially when we call it beef and that's a cow. It's usually chicken and chicken, but yeah, that's brilliant. If you know more about the animals that you're consuming and such like, then maybe you wouldn't do what you do to them.
And the animals you're helping, like if you put up a bird feeder and then you look at that bird as an individual, it's suddenly not like, oh, there's so many birds that are becoming extirpated and extinct. You're like, well, I helped that bird. And that bird who likes this one seed more than another seed, they show a preference, they show individuality, and I'm helping them. I did the thing. And I think that can really be empowering.
Oh, brilliant. Well, those are two great recommendations, which we'll, as I said, link to on our show page, so that people can find them easily. So it only brings me to the final section of fact or fake. So, I understand that you have some for me, so I am prepared for your fact or fake number one.
Okay, so I know that this is lighthearted and we will get there, but I did think it was important to bring some numbers to it. So there are 10 million tourists in normal years that take part in unethical animal-based tourism every single year.
10,000?
10 million.
10 million who do unethical animal-based tourism. So we're talking about things like hunting, expeditions and stuff like that, yeah?
Well, even more nuanced than that. So it's, swimming with dolphins or riding elephants.
Thank you. Yeah, good point. You perhaps don't think of that as, into each point, I'm going to have to say that's a fact.
It is fake. It's 110 million.
Good one.
So
well done.
much more. And the reason I bring this up is not to shame people and not to make people depressed, but to say that there is a critical misunderstanding of what unethical tourism looks like. And I think people go places and they go, oh, if I can ride on an elephant, I must be able to. And if I can swim with a dolphin, I must be able to. But the fact that this number comes up to 110 million people, This is not because they're bad people. It's because marketing is very good and it tells you, yeah, you're just misinformed. And this is why, you know, being a B Corp is so good, because you can trust that certification. People go traveling and they don't see any certification and they go, oh, I'm sure it's fine. But you see the B and you're like, whew, okay, I know it's fine. I don't have to be an expert, but I know I'm doing something that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right then. Well, let's see if you've got more winners in your bag. Give me another one.
Well, so this is green elephant. Elephants are domesticated animals like horses.
I would say, well, I'm sure there are probably some that have been domesticated, but I would say that's a fake.
It is fake. You're right. Yeah. So domestication is actually it's a permanent genetic change.
Like dogs and cats.
Exactly. So they co-evolve over 1,000 years, and they inherit like a predisposition to people. So even a feral dog will see a person and go, maybe there is some steak for me. Maybe I can be your friend. Even if there is fear, there's something in their brain that they know that humans can be trusted. Elephants are not. Every single elephant is still a wild elephant. And while some of them have been habituated to people, most of the time they haven't. And they are just, their behavior is continually corrected through often violence. And so this is why we say no riding elephants, because they're not domesticated animals. You're riding a wild animal that in consent is not consenting. It's being coerced at best.
Slavery at worst. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So one each. Have you got a third one for me?
I think I've depressed you enough.
Do you want me to test you on a couple?
I do. Yeah, I want to be tested. I've been studying all night.
You have. Okay. So I obviously looked. You live in a fantastic country in Canada. It is massive and it's quite, in population terms, empty.
So small.
But if the largest countries had the biggest populations, if you understand what I'm saying, put all your countries in order and your populations in order, then Canadian population will fit into Portugal and the population of India would fit in into Canada.
So I know that there are more people that live in California than live in all of Canada, which is like my little stat, which doesn't help this. But I know. I'm gonna say that's fact.
It's actually fake.
Oh no!
That was nasty. If the largest countries had the biggest population, the Canadian population will fit into Pakistan, which is a difficult one to envisage, but it's probably not far off the size of France in size. But obviously, it wasn't France. Pakistan's what you got, but the population of India would fit into Canada.
Oh wow, amazing!
So I mean, they're only second or third biggest. So you got a. It's a massive country, isn't it, Canada? And it's but even with the limited population, it still had still has a tough time with some of its indigenous species and where they're endangered, haven't you?
Yeah, I think Canada itself has really is in the process, I should say, of coming to terms with the fact that Canada is a nation of immigrants, and I think that has been said so often that a lot of people are very happy with that. So, like, they celebrate it. We love having more people from abroad come over. Of course, I am not Indigenous. Everyone that looks like me is not from Canada. So growing up, this was the narrative we heard. But only recently, I would say in the past 5 or 10 years, have we really come to terms that we're settlers. Yes, Canada, immigration is excellent, this is wonderful, but we immigrated to a place that we weren't asked to come. And we not only exploited the First Nation, Indigenous, and Métis people of this land of Turtle Island, we also did terrible things to the natural world, looking at clear cutting and pit mining, and also of the animals here. Even just like sending back beaver pelts for hats. We still have very strong ties with the UK, but often, or when Canada was first becoming Canada, it was very much this place, we can extract everything, including the people, because it's for us to exploit. And so I'm so thankful that I'm alive in a time that we're talking about truth and reconciliation.
Yeah.
And it's a time that we're able to say, this happened, it's still happening. What do we do now? Not let's just have it in the background and say, let's move forward. We have to move forward together. And I think it's so important.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, really, because to a certain extent, even the most of Britain are immigrants because they came from either Norway or France or whoever was invading us next. So yeah, everyone's got an element of lack of indigenous, probably not so much English as it is for the North Americas, but it is an interesting challenge, I must admit, to try and balance that up after such a long period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and to
And
make it.
some of it isn't even that long. Like
No,
residential
well, I
schools,
suppose not. No.
yeah, like the last residential school closed in 1996.
Oh.
Like the cultural genocide of the First Nations, Indigenous people was going on when I was alive. And so it's important for us to say we're in a place that I did not choose to be born in Canada, but I still have a responsibility to look at the unceded lands and look at the treaty lands and say, again, like together, what does this look like? We're here now, and looking at the land back movement and looking at different treaties that are happening. What do we do? It's not an easy answer, and the answer is not the same because each First Nation is its own nation. And so that is something that's super important to think about as well. And I love that this conversation is happening, because if it didn't, we would all just be sitting here going, gosh, doesn't it feel bad to be on First Nation land? It does, yeah. But now there are these movements and there are these creators, and there's even on TikTok, there's Indigenous TikTok, and you can see creators and artists and people that are a little bit younger than me, but they are sharing their nation's culture, which even in my lifetime, like, was tried to be destroyed. And the people were not, First Nations people were not allowed to dance. And now people are on TikTok dancing and showing younger, older, everyone that this is a thing we're allowed to do. We are resilient, and our nations are coming up together in peace because we're talking and that communication is happening.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Well, I got one more for you, actually. Yes, I think it's just. Do you? Oh no, I might have two more. I don't know. The island, because you're an Irish link, haven't you, personally?
Yeah.
Ireland tops the table for the share of their population that volunteered for charity between 2009 and 2018. Ireland, Little Emerald Isle, percentage of their population that volunteered for charity between 2009, they're the top of the table. Is that a fact or a fake?
There is no way that I can't say that that's a fact.
Well, you saw right through me, and it's a fake.
I know, but I still have to go in and say, of course.
Yeah, they are number 10, and 38% of their population volunteer for charity, which I think is a good number.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Who is first then?
Sri Lanka.
Oh,
Actually,
wow.
quite surprisingly, at 46%, so nearly half of the population volunteer for charity at some point in Sri Lanka.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Number 2, and quite close behind them, is Turkmenistan,
Okay.
Myanmar, and Liberia, which are not places where you think.
No.
I mean, no disrespect to the countries, but they're not perhaps the place you go when you think of philanthropic activities. So,
And brings up
yeah,
such an interesting point to just think so often in the global north we go, oh, I have to go here to help because there aren't people helping. Oh, I have to do something. But these countries are volunteering themselves. There are already programs that have been there before you, will be
yes,
there after, and it's not about us being white saviors. It's about us looking
no,
around
good
and
point.
going,
Yeah.
hmm, fair point.
White supporters perhaps just we just got some things that they haven't got on occasions, which is usually money and time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think on that basis, and I've lost track of whether I won or lost on that one.
I think we're all winners when we
Oh,
learn.
we're all winners when we volunteer. That's right. I think on the basis that I also read a stat which said that 96% of volunteers believe that volunteering makes people happy. There was a survey, 96% volunteers said that it made them happier in their lives and more answered questions more positively after they'd done regular volunteering. So for your role in making that a reality and probably fulfilling a whole stack of dreams in the meantime when people go to actually to some of these countries and do things with these amazing animals, I really thank you for spending the time with us on the Green Elephant Show. Thank you, Nora.
Oh, thank you so much, Russell. It has been joyful in a space that can seem depressing and overwhelming. It was so good to talk with you, and yeah, just have some laughs.
Thank you. We really hope that you found this special B Corp Month episode both informative and entertaining. Make sure you don't miss any of the 31 interviews with B corporations who are striving to be a force for good. So make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a thing, and don't forget to spread the word with others. If you have any questions about being or becoming a B Corp or any comments and suggestions about the show, please do get in touch. You can email studio@greenelephant.show or visit the website greenelephant.show or find us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube or Twitter by searching for Green Elipod or The Green Elephant Show. You can also review the show on Google and Apple Podcasts. Join us tomorrow and we hope you have a sustainable day.